Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old to history to anecdotes to really wherever our whims take us. Starfire! I mean, maybe you could guess because we got big Starfire hair today. You gonna do Starfire, you gotta have big hair. Now, Starfire had a 2015 solo series that has engendered many feelings, as evidenced by the response I got when I posted that I was thinking about doing a retrospective on this series. That comic was so good. You should definitely talk about that series. I missed that series and wish that it never got cancelled. I would prefer a retrospective on literally any other series, but okay, literally. And finally, my favorite, I didn't even know about this. The Starfire solo series in and of itself is an interesting experience, but so is the environment that spawned it. And that environment helped spawn some of the reactions to it. I've got history, I've got quotes, I've got cheesecake, I've got it all. But before we get started, I'm Sasha, and if you're enjoying this content, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, join us on this comic book journey, and if you're feeling so inclined, hit that join button, get some access to some behind the scenes exclusives, and also help support the channel. Alright, Starfire time. Starfire debuted in DC Comics Presents number 26 in 1980, and was created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez, and rose to prominence alongside the team she was a core member of, the New Teen Titans. Starfire became quite a popular character, carving a place for herself as a character who would stand the test of time. She would also come to have a prominent ship, a relationship in the form of her and Dick Grayson, Robin and later Nightwing. The two even nearly got married, but their wedding was disrupted by an evil raven. It was a thing. She would get even more of a boost in the mainstream decades later, this thanks to adaptation. The Teen Titans animated series, which ran from 2003 to 2006, in a characterization which, while accessible to kids, would end up resulting in some bleed back that will be relevant to this 2015 series we're about to tackle. This rendition and the show would end up being extremely popular. Now, on the comic side of things, in 2011 DC Comics rebooted its entire universe, and this change in continuity affected Starfire in a way that Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985 hadn't. The Teen Titans had managed to roll through that one pretty much unscathed, just with some minor tweaks. I mean, unless you were Donna Troy. Who is Donna Troy? The reason for this was because the New 52, as it was called, did away with much legacy, but at the same time still featured some legacy characters. There were lots of questions at the start as to what was and what was not still canon. Had she been on the Teen Titans? Did they exist? Had she been with Dick? She was now on Red Hood and the Outlaws with Jason Todd and Roy Harper. As time went on, it would become more consistent. The characterization would line up across books, but at the start it did not. And Starfire was one of the focal points where it was clear that memos had not been exchanged. Also, some rankled at her depiction within that series, and felt that it was very much along the lines of sex object and only sex object, and who is she going to be sleeping with today? Jason Todd or Roy? Mileage varies. There are fans of that series, but on the whole, it has a reputation for being very poorly received. She started off the New 52 here, debuting when it started in 2011. Some go so far as to claim that this time period ruined her character, so perhaps we'll need to do another Ruined vid. Ruined! Such a good YouTube title. Starfire ended her time on this team by leaving Earth and going to space. This to heal her sister Blackfire, as some portions of her backstory had been tweaked. There are some very subtle shifts, but they make a big difference. But that is neither here nor there for our purposes with this series. For the character who appears in our 2015 series bears little resemblance to her New 52 or pre-New 52 counterpart. Instead, she has much more in common with her animated series versions, specifically Teen Titans Go. Don't think I'm just saying that, I have receipts. Amanda Connor, co-author of the series, stated, "When we thought of how we wanted to handle Kori, we wanted to give a big nod to when Marv Wolfman and George Perez created her. We also loved the Teen Titans Go animated series, so we wanted to bring in a little bit of that flavor in her character." This 2015 series was written by the aforementioned Amanda Connor and her husband Jimmy Palmiotti. It ran for 12 issues and had art by Emanuele Lupacchino for the first 8 issues and Elsa Charretier for the remaining 4. Now, this series would be followed by DC Rebirth, a soft retconning of some of the events in the New 52. The more egregious elements that people weren't enjoying. It's not a hard reboot though. Some describe it as such, but it wasn't. Most of the canon from the New 52 remained intact up until the Omniverse, where now it's all intact. Huzzah. However, Palmiotti would claim that these shifting internal status quo would have nothing to do with their series, or how it ended. He stated, "When we were offered Starfire over a year ago, Amanda and I committed to 12 issues total, nothing more and nothing less. And with the series ending with us, we worked out the year in advance, and now we are writing the last couple of issues. Nothing has changed for us on any level. What they'll do with the character after us is in the hands of the people at DC Comics, and we are good with whatever they choose. We look at the series as spending time with a character we love, and hope that our version will continue in the books after. Us ending on number 12 had nothing to do with any relaunch or anything else going on in the DCU. So very much, we're doing our thing and they can do what they want. Mileage varies in how people feel about that, and this quote is gonna come up later, so keep it in mind. Keep it close to your heart. So before we get into why some fans ended up mad at the series, we need to take a look at the series itself. Take a look at what happened. Do an overview. So let's do it. All the main covers in the series are by Connor, and some issues have some variants, either just in general or they're tying into other things, like there's a Green Lantern 75th anniversary variant and a Looney Tunes variant. Issue 1. This story starts off by reintroducing the reader to Starfire and giving a complete synopsis of her then canon backstory, with some loose connection to the New 52 Red Outlaw series. And by loose, I mean pretty much non-existent. You don't need to have read that series at all to come into this one. Basically all it's explaining is that she's back on Earth, but the way it's written, you could even read it like this is her first time coming to Earth. And the way that she acts, it kind of feels that way. Which at this point was Cliff Notes version. Starfire was the youngest princess of Tamaran, which was attacked by the Citadel, who killed her parents, and her sister was kept as a figurehead and forced to let her sister become a slave. But Kori, after years of abuse, was able to rally not only herself but others and escape. Key differences between this and her past origin are her people being a peace-loving people and not warriors, and the complete removal of villainous intent from her sister, who initially sold her into slavery for the throne. But her backstory is neither here nor there, as it plays a minimal part in this series and only very slightly informs the characterization or events. This is a Starfire who doesn't know what money is, doesn't know how to get a job, doesn't understand the nuances of communication or social rituals. She needs information about almost everything. Why is she back on Earth? I don't know, reasons. Just be glad she's there. You know you're glad. She's telling her story to Stella Gomez, the sheriff of Key West, whom Starfire demonstrates her powers to. And since Stella wasn't actually on duty but was just in catching up on some work, she decides to leave and help Starfire find a place to live. They bond and become fast friends as several series staples are established. 1. There are these headers between scenes that function like little title cards. They're all tongue-in-cheek in keeping with the series' comedic tone, so they're all a little punny. Also, there are little thought bubbles full of the literal images that Starfire imagines when she hears a turn of phrase she's unfamiliar with. Stella spends the whole day with her. They get beers, they get clothes, she helps her find a place to live. It says royal. Is that because I am a princess? Yep, sure. Starfire also makes out with a boy, Boone, just cuz. This series is all about expressing a free love style attitude for Starfire. It comes up throughout, and is deliberate. Connor stated, yes, I have many quotes, multiple quotes, Starfire would pursue romance with anyone she finds full of beauty and life. She's a total romance pursuer. She's in love with love. Speaking of love, this issue introduces side character and through-line romantic interest Saul, Stella's brother, a member of the Coast Guard with a sad past. He lost his girlfriend in a rescue during a storm, so he has angst. Also, he has a co-worker, Ravina, who likes him and wants him to move on with her, cause it's been 2 years. That's gonna keep coming up. People really want Saul to move on. Issue 1 ends on a hurricane hitting. Issue 2 sees the hurricane fallout, and Kori saves various people around the town, including Saul, who has gone out to rescue some honeymooners because he won't let anyone get left behind. Not on his watch. The series' tone is in firm force here. Humor with action, adventure, and some drama and romance, in that order. But there is a balance between the humor and the excitement. It feels very fast-paced and like a lot is happening, but like you're also getting a lot of character development. Saul and Kori's meeting is very Little Mermaid. Orange, a flying angel girl, named after it. Tasty herb. Saul, it's only tasty if you can taste it. Fun fact, how you taste coriander is actually genetic. Some people don't taste it the way they say it tastes. I say that for I'm one of those people. And to me, coriander tastes like dish soap. I will never know the joy of coriander, apparently. Since the storm destroyed where Kori was staying, she's offered a place at Stella's brother's, which he shared with his fiance previously. So he's reticent, but whatever, he needs to get over it. It's been 2 years, says everyone in the series except for Saul and Kori. Also, a monster was unleashed during the storm. Issue 3. At the start of this series, everything is very interconnected. We have a cold open murder. Soren, a man with some kind of mental ability and a Vulcan name, boards a cruise ship and murders the crew upon them discovering he was not who he said he was when they rescued him. Saul and Kori bond as she moves into his house, and the monster from last issue is unleashed. It goes around at the start, dishing out some comedic deaths, eating people on beaches and the like. Don't think too hard about it. This is all supposed to be lighthearted. Those people are dead. Nom nom nom. Starfire has a brief nod to her perceived black coating, which is a topic for another day because it would be a huge sidebar. When she tells one of her newfound friends she wishes she was his skin tone. There are a lot of fascinating cues and work to discuss there. Then she goes to a bar where everybody buys her drinks, which leads to her having a conversation with the waitress about mating rituals. rituals. This waitress is who it turns out the monster that was unleashed is after. The waitress is Atlee, aka Terra, who yes has a connection to Teen Titans Terra. Issue 4, they fight. Starfire and Atlee team up and defeat the monster, and Atlee's backstory is given, Cliff Note style for those who are not familiar with her. Atlee and Starfire become fast friends, making Stella the straight man of their friend group. It's very much an, oh, they so crazy, they're getting on my last nerve kind of dynamic. She needs to rein them in. Also, they both have an outsiders on Earth vibe, even though Atlee is from the Earth, just deeper inside of it. She comes from a place called Strata that's close to the core. The society is inside the Earth. This issue ends with Starfire meeting Soren, who had run the cruise ship aground and is cruising through the town, which is our lead into issue 5. Soren and Starfire are hitting it off and flirting a little bit, but when she reaches out her hand to touch his, they form some kind of psychic link and she sees his backstory. Soren was a doctor and oncologist who was said to be able to work miracles. This was because he was a healer, but one of those healers who heals by taking the illness into himself. This had manifested as a brain tumor. He'd been controlling it with a serum, but that was no longer working, and it was also doing something to his brain. Suddenly he was having violent episodes and would kill those around him. He also, as we had seen, had some kind of mental power that could kind of shift the perception of people, how they were seeing him. He breaks contact with Starfire and flees, and she is too stunned to go after him, even though she feels like she should. Meanwhile, a bounty hunter who had been engaged to go find her last issue is now nearing Earth and is shown to be a loose cannon, firing into an armada at random when they call, threatening him, saying they have his family so he needs to turn back. So they just let him go because he's unhinged, and they ain't got time for that. We do though. Starfire meanwhile needs to get a job to earn that money. She gets a job in an aquarium where she makes out with a dolphin. Thus she can talk to the dolphin and learns that she is missing her mate and vows to free the dolphin and get her back to her loved one. Also, a seed becomes a light being and she sets it free, and there's a party at her house, and at the end of it she finds Saul in a pool of blood, knocked out by Soren. Issue 6. See, it's all flowing together. We begin to see the backstory on Maria and Saul's relationship. Much of it we already knew from beforehand, but these are some more concrete details. Also, we see the fact that she looks a lot like Starfire. Starfire loses control and starts trying to drown Soren, but she is distracted by seeing the remainder of his memories and finds she can't kill him. If she had killed him, that would have brought her very in line with her 80s incarnation. Saul, who is up, starts CPR, and she marvels how she's never met anyone like him, someone who would save someone who had attacked him. Shots fired at Red Hood and the Outlaws, and also at Dick Grayson. Over. Say bye to Soren, because we're never gonna see him again. Saul gets checked out at the hospital, and him and Corey go get some pancakes, but this is interrupted. Their quasi-date cannot be, for the bounty hunter shows up, and he's killed someone to get to Starfire, and this enrages her. This is just the issue of Starfire getting enraged and almost killing people, because she does defeat this bounty hunter, Craig, but decides not to kill him. Craig? Doesn't matter, he's gone, we never see him again. It would be so easy to kill this man and let it be a warning to them, but I'm trying to put those ways behind me. She instead puts Craig, the bounty hunter, back in his ship and programs it to go to another galaxy with a warning message on it. This Starfire wanting to change her more brutal ways is a vestige of her original characterization, where she had not just a darker backstory, but a warrior's upbringing to go with it. It does feel a bit abrupt here because it's mostly been cute jokes up to this point. Oh, how does this thing work? And oh, should my shirt be buttoned or unbuttoned? Oh, should I kill or not kill? It is welcome though. It reminds one how dangerous this character can be. Starfire is very serious business, or she can be. She is a warrior princess. She has killed, and she will kill again. But this is a brief moment, and it only occurs twice more throughout the series. This issue ends with Dick Grayson showing up. At this period in canon, he's believed to be dead, but he's actually working as an undercover agent for Spiral. Grayson vacation situation. Oh, so much rhyme. Issue 7 and 8 involve Dick Grayson. We start off with Saul and Starfire growing closer and going on an actual date. They're gonna go on a night cruise, and of course that's the same cruise that Dick's target is on, so he's on the boat too. Saul and Starfire kiss, which he feels very guilty about, but she tells him it's fine, they can take their time, they can do whatever he does or does not want to do. It can just be platonic, it can be whatever. But then all hell breaks loose, and Corey of course is able to recognize Dick through his spiral disguise, and so the two end up having a reunion. She even flies off with him and leaves Saul on the boat. Dick Grayson's doing spy things. He's got to get a briefcase, there's a trigger in it, but Starfire destroys it, not understanding why she can't just get rid of the problem. He tries to explain to her, you know, sides and subterfuge, but it doesn't go over very well, and they just end up making out. But people are still out there who are trying to get him, and he needs more info. The two spend some time together, but it's bittersweet. While they both like each other, it's presented as their relationship has changed, so they end up parting ways after he gets the information that he needs. This mini arc also sees Ravina telling Saul about her feelings for him and how she would treat him better than how she perceives Corey is treating him. But he says he can't get involved with someone from work again, not after what happened before, and that him and Corey are just figuring everything out. Atlee and Stella are planning their trip to Atlee's Inner Earth home of Strata. This had been mentioned a couple of issues prior, and now they're actually gonna go. It's gonna be a vacation. Starfire returns, ready to give her relationship with Saul a shot after saying goodbye to Dick, and the two, her and Saul that is, kiss as a mysterious light glows at the bottom of the pool. Issue 9 sees the departure of Lupacino as artist and the arrival of Charretier, and it is quite noticeable. The two have very different art styles, so it is quite a jarring shift. And so it gives a different vibe to the series. The same jokes, like the little visual asides and the throwaway cheesecake from Oblivious Corey, just feel different in this style. This issue sees the introduction of Silky, who is making his comic debut. That light entity that came from the seed has metamorphosized into Silky, who has now bonded itself to Starfire and also a bit to Saul, but she presents it like, oh, Silky is above us all, more developed and has picked us. We are Silky's pets. Stella, Atlee, and Corey set out for their vacation, but they briefly have to stop a robbery attempt on the way there. This so Stella can give a cliched "I'm on vacation" line. She's on vacation! They arrive at the city, but Starfire faints upon being shown it, and then the city is abruptly attacked by King Nyarlathotep, who wants to spread chaos. This leads us into issue 10, where it's revealed that Starfire passed out because she was overloaded by all the light in the city, which of course gives us our out for how she's going to defeat all the hordes that are descending upon it. A wave of cheetah monsters is attacking and has killed numerous citizens, and while Atlee is holding them back, she's being overwhelmed. Corey arrives and is able to defeat them and also kills the king. There is only one answer for you and those who relish causing others pain. Woo! OG Starfire in the house. The subplot of this issue is Saul, who has been taking care of Silky, and he's on patrol with Ravina, when Silky does some kind of mental coercion, lower inhibitions thing, and the two end up feeling compelled to kiss each other. Or rather, it's supposed to be that their inhibitions are down, so they kiss each other. Ravina is into it because she very much likes Saul, but Saul feels like he's been violated, and like he wasn't fully in control. This is gonna be the setup for how these two end up together. Atlee explains the mourning traditions of her people to Stella, and how it translates into a big celebration of life, which leads into issue 11, which is the vacation/party issue. This issue is a mix of sex humor, such as drunk Stella getting hit on by an otter-looking creature and Atlee proposing a foursome with that creature while Stella is passed out, Starfire accidentally causing this creature to climax and have babies and finding it hilarious. Also, this species only lives for 2 days. This detail thrown in there. Things happening, and then the tone shifts. The three go to a beautiful pool area, but it's full of emo fluid, so they end up having some deep conversations, and it doesn't go well for Stella and Starfire. Stella feels that Starfire shouldn't date her brother, that she's brought danger into their lives. That's too much for him after what happened with his fiance. Corey feels terrible, like she's endangering her friends, but Stella tells her no, not to feel bad, just reconsider the relationship with her brother, that she's gonna break his heart. That was heavy. Here, have some tentacle hentai. This octopus is the masseuse of the area for reasons. The women all leave, but things are heavier than when they left. The subplot of this one is that Silky knocks out Saul and takes him to his aunt's house, where it turns out that there's something going on with his aunt. And so we build to our denouement of issue 12. Issue 12 sees the woman returning home in time for Fantasy Fest, but also it turns out that Atlee didn't do the calculations about the time difference quite right, and they've been gone longer than they expected. It's actually been a week and a half. But our comic opens on Starfire leaving with Silky, so we know this issue is going to be about her wrapping things up in Key West. She's lost her job at the aquarium because she's been gone so long, and so when she goes there and she sees her dolphin friend Beth, she decides to take her and free her, and then she reunites her with her lover, so that's that plot wrapped up. She no longer has a place at the house because Saul and Stella's aunt, who was not really mentioned before, has multiple sclerosis and has deteriorated and needs a place to stay, so Saul moved her in while they were gone. Also, that mind control / manipulated kiss led to a conversation between him and Ravina, which would have played out much better if that kiss hadn't been orchestrated like that. Like if the two had just been together and kissed, this would have felt a lot better. He says that this kiss opened the floodgates and he realized that it was her all along who'd always been there. Receipts where? But she's out of the friend zone, but he says he has to tell Corey because he wants them to get together the right way. And he doesn't even end up having to tell Starfire because she overheard him telling all this to his sister. She's sad but wishes them the best, and she asks him if he'd be open to a non-traditional type relationship, but he says no, he's a monogamy man. No throuple or polyamory for Saul. So she's already decided that she's leaving after her heart-to-heart with Stella, and so she gathers up all the relevant people for a picnic / barbecue on the beach. There's one last small scene of her saving people, and she says goodbye to everyone, including a little makeup scene with Stella to let her know that it's okay. Everything's fine, except it isn't. And one superhero cameo to tell her she's always welcome in the superhero community later. She's off for more adventures. The end. Let's break down this series first, then expand onto some of the pre-canon factors that made people big mad. This series has a lot to offer if one takes it for what it is and how it's presenting itself. And what it's trying to be is explained in those quotes from earlier, just kind of a self-encapsulated Starfire series. It stands almost entirely apart from canon despite some of the things that it does bring in. It's almost like its own maxi series. The first 6 issues in particular have an excellent balance of action and humor with the slice of life elements, and the art in the first 8 issues is stunning. Because you have the same writers all the way through, the characterizations feel consistent. And there's a lot of love clearly there for Starfire, as well as the characters chosen as supports and the original creations. There's even some Power Girl love thrown in there. Just a couple of panels gushing over Power Girl. The two had previously worked on the Power Girl series together and are big fans. Saul in particular fares well. He's made up of several tropes, but they come together nicely. Stella is fun, but after the first few issues, it feels like there's not much for her to do. The series does suffer from dropped plots though. Soren feels like there was much more to be done, but he just vanishes. The bounty hunter and her being sought out by the Citadel also peters out. There's a lot of time spent on lore and strata about their society and the people there, which also feels a bit wasted as the series stands on its own. While rereading this series, I kept coming back to the quote about only going 12 issues and being fine with it. This because of other projects, and it got me wondering. It does feel like some of the enthusiasm and direction went out of this series as it went on. It felt more balanced and focused at the start than at the end. Particularly once the characters get to strata, it feels like a different book. A perception that is doubled down on because of the change in art. The latter few issues are much more focused on the characters talking and discussing their feelings about various topics, such as missing their childhoods or having to be adults, and the action takes a back seat. So it feels less exciting than the start of the series. It's interesting, but some of it does end up feeling pointless as Starfire leaves at the end. Still, all of these issues feel very full. It's not necessarily a quick read. There's a lot packed into each issue, be it at the beginning or at the end. It's just what's packed in is different. On the plus side, you really do believe these characters are friends, and the emotional discussions are earnest and trying to connect with both the reader and come from a place that makes sense to the characters as they have been conceived in this series. The Saul Ravine romance, though, it feels very forced and rushed. Despite them saying they could have stayed on for more issues, it has a very wrap-it up vibe. And mental coercion will just never be my favorite trope. It takes a deft hand to do it, and this is not deft. This is a sledgehammer. It also feels odd after having taken 2 issues out to resolve things with Dick Grayson and have Starfire start their relationship with Saul for it to just end like that. Humor is, of course, subjective, but it is consistent throughout this series. So if the style joke lands for you, they will land throughout, as they're all in the same tone all the way through. Kinda cheeky, corny at times, dark at others, and with some lewdness thrown in. Starfire says, "That's what she said," more than once. I will admit, I laughed out loud at one exchange. "Corey, your boobs have a certain power here on this planet. They make men act stupid. How can I make men act smarter? Just by covering them. The men? Or the boobs?" Yes, I laughed. The series has a decent amount of cheesecake, and there are 2 running jokes about Starfire being attractive. One, that everyone finds her attractive and comments on it while she is oblivious, and 2, that she gets naked when she shouldn't and is also oblivious about that. Your mileage will vary based on your feelings about cake. There are some who felt this series contributed to the over-sexualization of Starfire, a history being especially highlighted at the time the series initially came out because of the New 52 Red Hood and the Outlaws, which at the time had been called out for going over the top in that regard. The series does a good job in bringing people up to speed in regards to characters' backstories. For the most part, it doesn't really dive into Grayson all that much. With all of that covered, let's get into the crux of what will determine whether you enjoy the Starfire series or not, and that is Starfire herself. This Starfire skews very much towards the animated version, heavy on the out-of-touch humor, at times to the point where it makes no sense. For example, Starfire will reference movies that she's seen or books that she's read, but still have no idea about any turns of phrase or some basic human interactions. The joke about the expressions can also get shoehorned in at times, which is something you would see a thought bubble for if this life was that comic. Because Starfire is so unclear about customs or how to act, she can come across like a bimbo at times, which rubs some the wrong way, as it does those who are attached to her older characterization or even her characterization from Red Hood and the Outlaws. This is a large part of why some fans are angry at this series. Some were hoping that this series would return Starfire to form as a competent leader. Instead, many felt they were given a kidified version of Starfire. The Starfire they wanted was, as mentioned, a leader, a fighter, someone who would kill, whose lack of understanding of human culture surrounded compassion, which she viewed as a weakness, not concepts of monogamy. Some felt that aspects of her personality, like her being from another world or being romantic and loving love, were being pushed to the forefront to the point where it was superseding some of the other aspects of her character that people really enjoy, and making her come across like a less competent character because of it, or at least a less serious one. Some felt that the authors didn't grasp the character, but instead just wanted to present their version. But must we know that some like and prefer this version. The romance aspects of Starfire also came across as quite passive in this series, despite her making out with people at random. Her willingness and her openness are used more as an explanation for why she is okay with how things end up with Saul or Dick leaving, rather than genuine attempts to explore a non-traditional view on relationships. Also, some felt romance pulled too much focus and diminished Starfire's character, where it had been an accent before, as a focus is not quite as strong and doesn't utilize all of her rich backstory. The thing is, this series was never claiming to be a reclamation of Starfire, but rather a take on her by creators who enjoyed a very specific version and create a story that catered to that version. Heavy on the Teen Titans Go with a dash of new Teen Titans. This series wants you to celebrate Starfire and have fun with her, and take a look at what these creators view as her strengths. Her openness, her kindness, her ability to make friends, her concern for the safety of others, her desire to learn and grow. It's one of those series where I can see both why some people absolutely adore it and keep coming back to it, and why some are completely repelled by it. This series could actually serve as a decent jumping on point because it does get you into the vibe of comics, and so you could jump off from here and go to other things. It also has a very similar tone to other series that this duo worked on together, so if you enjoyed this, you are more likely to enjoy Harley Quinn or Power Girl, and vice versa. This series is a nice diversion, but ultimately doesn't go anywhere. But it does have some beautiful art and some laughs, and it could be right up your alley. Or it could be a big no. There are a lot of details in these issues, a lot of visual gags, and a lot of character work, and a lot of interesting discussions that I didn't exactly get to highlight. So if any of what I said sounds interesting to you, I would say this series is definitely worth your time. But those are just my thoughts, and I want to hear yours. Did you read this series? Did you enjoy it? Why or why not? Pro or against silky induced love interests? Did the change in art style jar you? Just tell me all of the things, and while you're doing that, please also do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye!